The man picked up a human head and kissed it, not because he's a pervert, but because kissing it prolongs his life. But you'd never guess that the head is still alive. He's been alive for nearly 1,000 years. It's also a case of ghosts and humans coexisting, ever since humans issued a decree on the cessation of demons. Ghosts began to be exorcised on a large scale and a profession was born. The ghost killer's people began to mistreat the ghosts, and they made the killers compete with the demons for fun. The man in front of him was named Jin Qing, and he had never lost a battle since we started talking, but that was only on the surface. His leader didn't hide his disgust when he talked to him. You're not an artist at all. What are you talking about? You're a monster. As a frequent killer of ghosts and monsters. Ghosts and monsters naturally do not like him. Both sides are not pleasing to him. Unusually lonely. To quit drinking. To kill his sorrows. Tavern owner told him to have money to go to see a doctor. Do not spend money on the Jin Qing was very aware of the original marks on his body by the owner as a philandering disease. Jin Qing did not say more, just remembered a bad past stalking on. The roadie encountered the villagers and kittens fighting with them as ghosts and monsters, but this is just a normal kitten. Jin Qing flicked him a little kitten, secretly scratched him, which also proved that this is really a small wildcat night again, a fight without suspense. But outside the country is a little different. He was being followed. Jing Jing asked what he has a sense of curiosity to reach out and look at the marvelous dragon maid immediately stopped him and showed the marvelous god method, then subsequently was pulled out a shotgun aimed at Jing Jing. Jing Jing did not panic in the slightest. Mercifully, 2-0 stored power out while the maid to dodge the gap will be poured into the gun wine. This shotgun is completely useless. The maid can only take close combat knife back sliding through the empty body, unusually sharp. But soon reversed came while Jing Jing flying into the air, when the maid will be the shotgun system out of the Jing Jing Jing. Although successful in dodging, can be the maid in its save. Switching Thunder's position to come in front of the face of the formation of the kicks, in the face of the Jing Jing Jing. Jing Jing also not willing to show weakness. Jing Jing shook the maid to the ground. The maid said, "This is the end of the line. It is all because he rashly touched the two dragons in the future. Please pay attention to a little bit of this time in the apology, or give orders." Jing Jing naturally not happy with the other side, but the other side is in a position of victory. Seeing the other side so understand their own, Jing Jing let go of her. Cannot help but ask the other side of the purpose. The maid pointed out that Jing Jing already time is running out. Jing Jing showed a puzzled little expression. The maid then said, "Who would not have thought that seemingly gentle young man is actually half human, half ghost body? But his body is not perfect, seems to be mixed in a way that is too rough. Resulting in him to maintain his sanity is very difficult to be swallowed by monsters. Soon after, he will be completely lost. The self so well understand their own." So Jing Jing cannot help but get up the heart of killing the maid is not the slightest bit panicked, proposed to make a deal with Jing Jing. He can help Jing Jing to extend the life in exchange for Jing. Jing have to agree to one of the conditions of the maid said. While holding a birdcage slowly approaching, Jing Jing realized that has been talking to their own is not a maid, but in front of this head of this girl named Crow Leaf. The face beside it is her servant. Close to the Jing 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 asked her, "Is the legendary undead the dead?" It is said that there is only one Crow Leaf in the world nodded and said that he is now 947 years old. Rat Cat kept in the period of 14 years old. But since it is the undead, why only the head left? Duck Knight narrated, "Walk in half a year ago. His lower body was snatched by someone. The reason why he could not recover, that is because he was wounded by a ghost. The ghost can make the monster's regeneration ability to be ineffective. But the other side is also a half dozen, so the power is also halved. The assailant he did not see, but only received the hands of the assailant. The other side is a raspy voice living in the old man with a walking stick. Listen to his accent as a foreigner, although the spy is also a half human, half ghosts, but the concentration of ghosts in his body is much more so. He should be able to kill him. In addition to the Mahitai performance is over, but people are pouring out the three can only change the place to talk about Duck Knight, and asked why Jing Jing both look forward to death and look forward to live. It turns out that the more Jing Jing uses her power, the more likely she is to be devoured by the ghosts and she's fighting in the ring. Isn't she expecting to die? The strange thing is, if you are looking forward to death, why did you resist when you went in to attack her? Jing Jing did not immediately answer. Just Lightsy said, if it really came to be devoured that day, but also with monsters to fight to the most exciting time that is also her side, are despicable first-class interesting and nasty bloodthirsty guests. She can kill as much as she likes. But now, after learning that can extend the life expectancy, he put down this plan to press the pressure of the endless lament. Venus is a strange person. This time it is to give up his life to make jokes a little while later. To use the hammer to kill. The Gold Star politely refused, because he did not intend to kill her, but to help her back to the body. Crowleaf said that the other side is too far away, maybe in Europe since there is the possibility of reclaiming the body. It would be better to dead horse as a living horse. But what is the benefit of doing so for the Kyungi? Gyeonggi then revealed the most important point. The Rao Poison's cane is engraved with Emo, and the person who kidnapped him and turned him into a half-human, half-bone. The two of them have the same ambition to frustrate the enemy. Now Crowleaf agreed to let Gyeonggi let him out, and immediately honor the extension, Kyungi Life Expectancy Agreement 2. Extend the life expectancy is to eat a part of the Raven Leaf, as the undead her cells have a very strong cellular resistance. Can help Jing Jing to improve the immunity of the human part of the body. But if her body Jing Jing is million cannot accept it. So the most suitable is to experience the tears. Tears, nose, snot, sweat, and saliva, but yaya not much sweat and tears, so in the area of the Jing Jing only saliva and snot, they still need to choose. Of course, decisively saliva. So there are two people in the moonlight kissing scene. 189 years in eastern France. A hunter is hunting elk knocking up the tail fruit of the gun, after the man actually
A long jump easily caught the elk with his bare hands, because he is not a human, but a vampire. The reason why the Foysam use of shotguns in order to get along with the human. Some of the side of the wildcats do not think so, only to remember that the human cruelty is beyond measure. A period of time ago also came to attack their father's point of view unexpectedly. On the contrary, justice was the only way to show the humans their friendly side. And then when they returned home, the lock on the warehouse had been broken, and there was a silver nail on the floor. The blood is still hot. Obviously, there is a heart blood. Ghosts have been poisoned. Goddard Alliance will be. Other people called out. Dale is the first to come out to ask what happened. Chin Junair is the housekeeper. Goddard asked him whether he found any abnormalities. Kita Lu shook his head, and the maid is with the youngest daughter in the laundry room singing. This makes Goddard heartache tight because Chin Shung, under his wife, has not yet believed that he opened the door of the room with a heavy heart cold came, but a cold corpse. Goddard? A home entrance was a large crowd of people with different opinions. Some think that in order to warn the Yaki Yiki Amoy. King faction also. Some think that there is a spy. What is the meaning of this incident? The body of Godian Goddard. A doorway was a large crowd of spectators. Say there are different opinions. Some think it is to warn the Qinghe faction. Others think it is a spy, and the work of a small reporter asked Goddard what he thought of this incident at present. The police in action makes him very angry. So he decided to hire their own detective investigation. Recently there is an eastern combination of exceptionally hot. Yes, they are the Crow and Goose and Jin Ching. They also have a loud title. They are also known as the Birdcage Messengers. But despite their high reputation, the two of them have empty pockets and can't even afford to pay for the horse. Jing Jing was going to take the tricky way of learning to return the goods to make things difficult for the driver. But Duck Knight on the side told him not to make things difficult for the driver. After all, the driver went to the tavern and was killed by his wife. Cursed toast up to a weak car driver full of surprise, this kind of thing. How does she know? In the end, Jing Jing can only dump the pot to Goddard, let it pay the following expenses. First meeting, both sides did a little self-introduction when the moment to see the Duck Knight with the vampires shocked a lot of Jing Jing immediately into the work mode. She first understood the composition of the family and then went to the scene. To observe the situation of the wife of the first 2 decades are also human, and later turned into a vampire who liked to repair the castle so often have the sound of the teeth of the iron, repression of the eyes to the top of the head. Goddard denied it, because vampires can heal quickly even if they're injured. So there's no need for decorations. Since Nanazawa's body decayed so quickly, he was buried early. Repression could only deduce from the photos that the wound was about 10 centimeters long, and seemed to be a staple wound. The left side of the wound bled less than the right side, and the expression on his face was unusually peaceful. It seemed that he'd been killed in his sleep. There are no marks on the chair, which means the murder weapon didn't penetrate Nanazawa's body. This means that the attacker must be very good at hiding the breath. Next is the holy water. After the death of the vampire with the passage of time, the breath packet will lose vitality. Even if touched by the holy water, will not be injured. This also indicates that the holy water is immediately after the injury sprinkle. The pharmaceutical industry also found a bottle. Bottle of dirt is not wiped off in the cap. There are traces of blood. Humiliated in the commission of crime seem to have touched the pharmaceutical industry. Continue to ask questions about the silver ingots in the warehouse. Seems to be from the hands of the hunter. Recovery of silver ingots is placed in the box. The silver ingots in the warehouse seem to have been recovered from the hunter's hand. Is it in the box? Goddard said it was in his hand. Lastly, is it possible to avoid the vampire touching the silver, or the holy water will be burned? Is it possible to avoid it? For example, wrapping it in fabric. Caused by Goddard, the surface can theoretically be blocked. But they vampires, once they get close to the camp, feel that it will be scalded. No vampire will touch it. The self-healing ability cannot be effective. After learning all of the information, Yagyu assumed that the murderer is an outsider, and put forward a number of questions. First, why? Did the wife not detect the attacker even though she had a sense of hearing and smell several times more sensitive than a human? Second, why did the murderer invade the camp at night when vampires are weaker in the daytime? And third, why did the murderer invade the camp at night when vampires are weaker in the daytime? Leave the bottles at the scene of the setup. The traitor's jacket wanted to camp to the warehouse after the assassination of the suspicions that made Goddard the murderer knew the location of the camp. And
there are 2 other points that Crow Goose did not continue to say: that the vampire family to prepare dinner for the duo, as the vampire family had prepared a meal for the pair. As rumored, they were sure they only drank blood, but not human blood. The 2 sons thought they were fooling around, but they soon proved their ability. The driver wondered how Ayan knew his wife was dead. Ayan recommended it by her clothes. The driver's undershirt was faded on the belly. The seams were rough, which meant it was often soiled, and his wife scrubbed it hard every time, which meant she often spilled food on her clothes. Generally, there was no food on it, and it was not a good idea for a vampire to drink blood. No one in his position would make such a cheap mistake. Only someone from a big psychic show, and his beard was scruffy, his collar clean, and his buttons re-sewn, all because of the fact that his wife had died and his wife's clothes had become faded. Misses every time in the finishing last is the car driver's undershirt, last washed about a week ago, his couple, but no new stains. That is to say, he did not drink for a week. I Hippo told him to cherish his wife inside the car driver. Nodded his head and cried inside. I called a pear blossom rain. This is simply Sherlock Holmes online. I also heard the name of this is said to be The Other Side. Is a very strange person. He does not want to get involved with him, not knowing that sometime in the future he will have to work with Sherlock Holmes to work together to get to the point. Yesterday found his wife's body already. 1:30, so that day at 00, Goddard family also at dinner. Goddard nodded yesterday after dinner at about 0:30. His wife said she wanted to go to her room to rest. Goddard went to the study on the 2nd floor where he talked with his eldest son at that time. The youngest daughter was also fiddling with dolls till 1 o'clock after the 3 of them went out of the study in the hall at the entrance to the separate. Every Monday at that time he went out hunting, and when he went to the warehouse to get his gun, the warehouse was still empty, which means that his wife was killed. Probably after that, when he left the castle, and his youngest son had never been separated with him. The strongest evidence is the empty 3 rounds of ribcage heard. 3 rounds are empty. The eldest son was a little surprised he heard in the room from the depths of the forest after the separation. At that time, he returned to the room. The calf is still singing. He was too noisy, so he shoved it to the maidservant. The darkness of the night continued to ask the youngest son, "Can
This caused them to be dissatisfied, but Raven Geese always think the culprit is in the midst of them. The youngest son has no choice but to explain him a little, before his own room were with Godel, but Godel confirmed the warehouse before he left the castle. There is a time gap cannot explain this. Even if the vampire minute, he was in his room until a little before the time of the murder with Goddard, but Goddard confirmed that there was a time gap between the warehouse and the time he left the castle. How can this be? Explained the youngest son. Said that even a vampire for a minute could not do this. Yayi asked if he heard any noise in his room. The youngest son shook his head. The next God of Thunder maidservant, he had finished his lunch at 0:30 in the kitchen to clean up a little bit, and then go to the on. His way to the laundry room, he met his youngest daughter, who seemed a little bored, so he took her to sing in the laundry room, during which time he made a trip to the laundry room. The restroom was a minute or two long, and the youngest daughter nodded to confirm the credibility of the testimony, and finally the butler, who went to the basement office after dinner to organize Goddard's work schedule, and did not move from his position, nor did he hear any commotion, after the testimony came down a little bit after which. There was no alibi for narrowing down the two men to the butler and the oldest son, and Goddard was furious at the fact that they could not have killed his own wife, and that he had no alibi. How could they have killed their wives? And then mention the death of her mother? The youngest daughter sad. The meal also ended. Yang arranged to go in to spy on the housekeeper and the maid. When the eldest son stopped the two and warned them about the situation, they did not care about the duel. Two to the forest to continue to explore. Suddenly, someone sneak attack. Goddard to see the disease heavy. Goddard can. Goddard is a vampire, can instantly recover, although he does not take the initiative to attack the human. But there are people sent to the door. He can only let the other side know. Vampire terror. Just one move to subdue the assassin in his eyes in front of him is the man who killed his wife. The murderer far hastened to stop him. This person is only today came to the city. His elbows have moldy dust. Must be long time on the train. Window stained. As expected, from the far away from the murder of the Countess of the same day, 3 days. The suspicion is removed. Raven Geese from the mouth of the assassin got
Name of
important
the
information
fruit
a while
of the
ago.
fish to attack Goddard Weiguo was killed by Goddard. He also came to avenge fish fruit confidence. That is, he has a powerful help. Crow Goose asked the assassin if he knew that fish fruit has a silver spike. The assassin did not know that the fish fruit is a silver spike. He also came to avenge Fishguard's death. Fishguard was confident that he had a strong support. Ravenous asked the assassin if he knew that Fishguard was in possession of a silver spike, but the assassin was unaware of this. After finding out, Ravenous asked Goddard to let the assassin go. After all, she would not dare to make a move on the vampire after this encounter, and Yayi also came up with an answer. She gathered everyone together and said that the murderer was in the crowd. She went on to add to the suspicions of the time of the murder. The oldest son and the butler were in the vicinity of the ladies' room, and no one heard a sound, which means that the murderer held the silver spike in his bare hand and drove it into the lady's chest with his bare hands, only with his strength. And the reason why he didn't hit the spike with a hammer is because if he did, the butler and the oldest son would have been forced to use it. This proves that the murderer didn't use a hammer, because he was afraid of damaging the murder weapon, which means that the murder weapon was not a silver ingot, but an object made of other materials. Lastly, the last mystery is the glass bottle. Why would there be dust on the inside of a glass bottle? If there was a liquid in the bottle, there wouldn't be dust. The murderer was trying to confuse everyone, but there were traces of holy water on the lady's body. So there can only be one truth. The murderer used the holy water from the church to freeze an ice pick and brought it back to the castle in the dark. The murderer used holy water from the church to freeze an ice pick and brought it back to the castle in the darkness of the night without anyone noticing. Then sneaked into Madame's room and stabbed the ice pick into her heart. And the ice pick made of holy water would fall into a state of high heat and dissolve quickly. And then the murderer used some sort of container to take some of Madame's blood. After that, the murderer waited for Goddard to go out hunting and broke the lock on the storeroom door to find it. The silver awl poured the container with the lady's blood on top of the silver stake to disguise it as a murder weapon. The reason for such a painstaking plan and layout shows that the murderer needed a sufficient alibi to clear his name to do so. Also shows that the murderer has great speed and strength, or else he would have been detected by the vampire lady at the first time. That being said, the truth is also emerging gradually. However, the youngest son is still taking chances and looks like he won't see the coffin. The youngest son is still holding on to the idea of a chance to look like a coffin without tears. Helpless Duck Knight had to reproduce the characteristics of the murderer, said that he poured the woman's blood on the silver stake and tried to place it to the pre-planned place, but to his surprise, he was burned by his own fingers and left scars. But his hands did not have any traces of scalding. It turned out that the reason why the youngest son's hands did not have scars is because he returned to the injured. After he was wounded, he used his sword to cut off his wounded finger. Because he is a vampire, as long as the heart does not suffer a serious injury, can regenerate any part of the seeing. That his plan was exposed in front of the people. Infuriated, he directly took action to set the time to rush to the Crow Yan, but he picked the wrong opponent. Next is the time for Zhen. Daw's personal performance only to see that he handed over Ms. Crow Yan to the side of the maid. One hand, he threw his youngest child out of the window. A flash came to the front of him. Not only did not slow down to take off the coat and shoes ready to send him to the Western Paradise, but as a vampire he still defied the power of his legs ejected from the rubble and continued to fight. But from the movement of Zhen Da, obviously not slow to take off his coat and shoes ready to send him to the West, but as a vampire, he was still not convinced his legs powered up and ejected from the rubble to continue to fight with Gentai. But from Gentai's movements, it's easy to see that he was obviously playing with him. Just like a cat that catches a mouse, always likes to play with it for a little while, after getting tired of playing with it, it eats it on the other hand. The face of the youngest son wasn't so easy to watch.
In the next 10 minutes, the white man's battle became almost one-sided, and in a short time the hero finished him off and returned to the house. Goddard couldn't accept the result. Yang Ye could only offer a few words of consolation after all. This kind of thing is too much for anyone else to bear after solving the vampire Boko's case. The two you embarked on a trip to London. The hottest of them all recently is a Bunny's preview letter, which states that he will go to the bottom of the collector Falk house to steal the town's treasure like a normal thief. Falk will definitely not care. But this time the person who found the letter is the famous Countdown Robin. The letter indicates that the rabbit will go to the bottom of the collector's house to steal the treasure of the house like ordinary thieves. Falk will not care, but the discoverer of the letter is the world-famous Countdown. Robin rumor has it that as long as it is what he wants, there is nothing that he cannot get. There is even more information that he has found the legendary Phantom of the Opera Eric as a deputy. This news has quickly attracted the attention of society. As soon as the news was spread, the public want to see how Falk will respond to it. Falk, naturally, he will not be without measures. He invited famous detectives in addition to the exceptionally strange birdcage messenger and the famous Sherlock Holmes, and even the local famous Lloyd's Law Society is actually a 20-year-old police reserve. There are only 7 members of the organization, but each of them is very good at protecting the client's property, as long as they have been entrusted. Once Robin was pestered by them, and Falk's current epidemic is 2 of the 3 parties when they met. Each of them looked down on
and thought that Falk was going to a great deal of trouble. However, Falk knew the horror of Robin's bandits. Just the tight security in the mansion was not enough to put his mind at ease. He took the witnesses to the underground where the treasure was stored. The structure was also quite complicated. The structure is also
quite complex. Not only does it take 4 people to unlock the main door, but even removing the treasure requires unlocking an even more secretive lockbox. However, the witnesses are stunned the moment Falk removes the treasure, a jewel called the Penultimate Night, which is so beautiful that
they are all surprised to hear how stunning it is. It turns out that the jewel, along with the chest, was acquired by Falk 20 years ago when a friend dug it out of the ruins and transferred it to him, and it took Falk 10 years to decipher the code to the chest.
I did not have time to enjoy this great joy, but once again was troubled by the writing on the black diamond in my mind. He asked someone to investigate the gem. Lie ye rumor that once there was a very prosperous tribe of dwarves. They were suddenly massacred by a tribe of werewolves. The dwarves in order to avenge the murder of the dwarves made the black diamond, and in the black diamond pointed out the location of the werewolves. This
newspaper Watson was trying to discuss with him.
The next day Watson just opened the door and saw that Holmes was leisurely sitting on the sofa reading.
Made Watson a little confused. Holmes was sitting leisurely on the sofa reading the newspaper Watson was trying to discuss with him. But Holmes did not call and did not make it, which made Watson a little puzzled. Well, indeed, Holmes's brother came in, and as soon as he came in, he asked the man in front of him who he really was, brother, through the length of his fingernails, and immediately judged that the man in front of him was the owner of the pirated version of the book. Holmes was still trying to defend himself. And the next second, the needle Holmes came in, and Robin could no longer pretend that he had stolen the diamonds. He took off his hood and confessed his identity, and then picked up a lock on the table and asked Holmes if he thought he could open it. But before Holmes could say anything, he said,
has thrown the unlock box is declaring war on Holmes. Robin, Big Eyes Not Disabled, said that there is no locks that they cannot open, so that Holmes do not waste their efforts to say that they jumped out of the window on the weekend under the Kwai had to fall on the back seat of the Phantom of the Opera car to fly away at this time. Jing Jing even still in the lakeside scenery to see the side of the snacks. Jing Jing could not wait to run over to the Ducks and Night to go in to ask where London's Spicy Spice House. 2 did not notice that not far from an old man birdcage is exactly the same as the dialogue birds were mixed up. The old man opened the birdcage was startled directly will be thrown. Yap Spicy Incense Hall where the 2 did not notice that not far away there's an old man's birdcage and Duck Night. Exactly the same dialed Lockbird Duck Night was taken to mix up. The old man opened the birdcage was startled directly will be thrown out of the subleaf sound. Speechless, a car just pick up the subleaf was whisked car in 2 halves. But the good thing is that she is not the dead for a while things. Beautiful subleaf once again intact, but in front of the 2 men but interested in it to look for the proximity of the subleaf. Accidentally met Robin. 2 people in the know, it's looking for something. After the 2 intend to help her search at this time. Both sides do not know each other's identity. At the next intersection they ran into the hostage Yaba's vehicle. They chased them all. The way to the side of the road, just past the side of Yoshino, saw him decisively jumped on the roof of the house to easily stop the hostage vehicle. Yano also smooth tour in front of them, looked at the success of the 3 reunion in front of the Robin, realized that they are the birdcage messenger. Really a narrow escape. Yano also saw the Robin's identity both sides. Without saying a word, they began to fight, only to see Robin scattered a bag of glass balls. Glass balls are unusually strange, was transformed into a variety of forms to Jing Jing attacked. Jing Jing originally thought that the hand to handle the pinch, the result of Robin's chick party fooled her, was a punch shocked in the jaw. Jing Jing unconscious. Robin warned the 3 do not intervene in this matter in plain terms was raised to go away. But Crowleaf know that the good show has just begun. Soon time to come to the evening of the invasion of this Robin. There are still 3 hours near the mansion has already been opened, layers of guards. The area around the mansion had already been secured. Even Sherlock Holmes had to check the authenticity of his entry. He had also brought along the chief of police who specializes in rabbits. It was Mr. Ganimard. Can you prove it? A letter was handed to him, and I and the others were already lurking at the top of the tower, while the 2 men from Lloyd Henderson's were to go to the ground to defend the basement. Holmes naturally had to guard the cellar. They locked the door and then sat around the jewel. Waiting for Robin's arrival when the appointed time came, there were violent explosions. Many of the guards went to their aid, but nothing was found. One of the guards' uniforms had even been snatched away, but the locks had existed since then. Robin said he could open any lock, but the locks never existed in the first place, so there was nothing Robin could do, just as everyone thought they were safe. Suddenly, the electric chamber shook again.
only to see water gushing down the top ventilation pipe. It turned out that the outer wall at the bottom of the tower had been blown away by the explosives, and the water of the river of dust gushed into the chamber through the ventilation pipe, and Holmes was also a bit confused. Can Robin swim like a fish into the chamber at this time? The wall outside the door was Rower's Agent No. 7. Forced demolition of a gap as the river continues to gush out of the water level to test the water level. Also gradually lower, but the diamonds in the box has disappeared. At this time, the clock also fell into 1:30. Can say that Robin, this wave of operation is simply perfect to the detective. The whole of the inner room of the stunned. However, since we cannot conclude that Robin has escaped from the castle, so long as to guard the entrance to the exit to the outside of the bridge, they still have a chance to be able to retrieve the diamonds. But on the way, Holmes suddenly noticed an anomaly. He asked the captain to ask for a pair of handcuffs, and then he directly held him down on the ground. He told them that the original early visit was not a simple provocation. He disguised as Holmes to tell everyone that the man in front of them is Robin. He asked the captain for a pair of handcuffs and then held him down on the ground. When everyone was confused, he told them that the man in front of him was Robin. The original early visit was not a simple provocation. He disguised himself as Sherlock Holmes in order to make the detectives think that Robin's disguise was nothing more than putting on a wig and a false nose, so that he managed to avoid Holmes's investigation, and then used the principle of locks to divert the detective's attention to the destruction of the locks, so that he would be able to avoid the detection of the diamonds. He then used the lock to divert the detective's attention to the destruction of the lock so that his water attack could be maximized, and the Phantom of the Opera could run the rope along with the current. And he took advantage of the confusion to tie the safe to the end of the rope so that he could unknowingly stun the diamonds to the outside of the house. Fortunately, Holmes left. The diamonds had already been hidden in his coat by Dr. Waffle, but the type of way was still hidden by Robin, so that Robin escaped from the scene under the teachings of the Robin went to the courtyard to gather with the brother June's sister Shadow. However, the safe suddenly gave him a slap. Did not wait for him to react to the golden green fell from the sky to retrieve. The safe was retrieved from the sky. It turns out that before this Raven Knight found out that Robin thought the newspaper reporter was himself, so he made a plan to paralyze Robin by letting Jinqing intentionally fail to beat him. Then Raven Knight found Foucault and asked him to enter the safe instead of the diamonds on Robin's side. Still had to cut out Phantom in the result before the battle started. There were 3 people on his. The Phantom first skipped out of the game. The thin ice machine exploded in place of the proximity to see the situation, and immediately Ludley. Later, Lloyd's number 5 also arrived at the scene, but she didn't come to help either side. She herself hates monsters and rejects bandits. She just wanted to give all the people present a knife, but they don't. Knowing that the stone bridge outside the castle has been violently blown up by Professor M, her purpose is also for the diamonds to come under the hand of the minions are the same as Jinqing. Are all experiments not only full-bodied and Q-shaped vampires, there is also a want to point out a person of the fireman. It did not take long for the fireman to meet the late Holmes and the Raven Knight. Both sides came up to start the war. The Blood Ghost is on. The follow the target of the loss of time to enter the original did not want to waste time in this. After all, her mission was to pursue the Phantom. But the Blood Ghost didn't want to let her go, and although the Phantom escaped the close pursuit, she was targeted by Agent Thus 7, who joined her in the middle of the battle, and the scene was quite chaotic. After a few rounds of fighting, Peace realized that it would be futile to waste time instead of restricting the 3 parties, so she and Surprise exchanged glances, and formed a kind of tacit understanding that one of them would act as bait, and the other one would be responsible for ambush. You don't say. This trick is also very good at scaring and breaking people's mouths and forcing them to break. Nomba 5 was about to strike, when Robin ambushed him on the 2nd floor, and knocked him out on the other side. Agent Nomba 7 was lured by the Phantom to a place where visibility was very low and the dark place was her home turf. Because the Phantom had lived on the 23rd floor of the basement since she was 16 years old, to learn how to transmit and influence sound, it's virtually impossible to beat her in this area. So it wasn't long before Nomba 7 was thrown down from the heights, and fell to the same place as Jinqing and the others. From the high place was vertical. Down, coincidentally fell to the same place with the gold green. Then at this time, 5 also broke free from the bondage. Originally thought that the situation will become 2 to 3 results. Ripper guard check, suddenly broke into the window, as soon as Amati Chiza. It landed on the ground directly open. The word move. This person instantly by a sea of blood, shrouded in the hallucination, fixed the whole body. Jack took advantage of this time to take down the diamonds and the surrounding reaction to the small snatch when the Jack is preemptive. The gold Jin, a row after the agents. Body was direct. I'm so high the counterattack was a slap directly lifted, fainted over such a strong opponent. Dobie and Maine really turned around and ran the scene. Only Jack and Jinqing and Taboo side. Although the force to suppress the vampire Carmilla, but the means is not as insidious as the other side, but would not have thought that someone in the lips coated with a layer of aphrodisiacs and forbidden in the beginning of the play. Inadvertently touched Carmilla's lips with his hand. This special poison once touched the whole body will be paralyzed and feverish, and finally lose resistance to fall into the implementer of the playthings. This powerful scene I'll see for you guys. The fireman. This side of the overwhelming abuse of food. Worthy of the old man experiment sewing monster. Not to mention humans against it, even the same type of monster, over to the backpack rubbing skin. But the opponent is Holmes. Big powerless naturally is not their first option during the time. A Knight asked the fireman why they want to look for the whereabouts of the human wolf. Fire Blue told the Raven Geese organization is currently under development and therefore need to collect different monsters. The Raven Geese immediately realized that their own body, it must be on their side. This turn disrupts the conversation. Normally, the Apostle will carry a bottle of antidote on his person. Holmes originally intended to use this gap in time to arrest him, but did not expect the other side of the extremely fast speed of the system before he had time to make up for the knife. Professor M made a strong appearance. Holmes' eyes recognized the person. In front of him, he is Professor Moriarty.
A long time ago, the men had fought by the waterfalls. The professor 8 years ago, the organization had been destroyed by someone, did not think that now it was reappeared. The professor saw the existence of the Asian was also very surprised. Although the undead, but only ahead. But still, able to chase here. Such perseverance is really amazing, he told everyone. The purpose of this return is for his unexpected disciple. He longed for a strong body, so he asked the professor to teach him the knowledge of transplantation surgery by artificial means into the power of monsters, that is to become a suture monster. The professor was also inspired by this to find ghosts and undead. The professor was inspired to search for ghosts and undead. When his experiments were successful, he would be able to create a human being with the ability to regenerate, as well as an intelligent body. And this disciple was the man who had realized the perfect paradigm at the Whitechapel. So the professor began to extract cells from the body of the ghosts and transplanted them into the bodies of able-bodied young men. Most of the subjects developed patches along the arteries that were the same color as the ghosts' bodies. Their hair and eyes would also change, although their physical abilities increased dramatically due to the concentration of ghosts. In their bodies, almost all of them suffered from backlash in numerous experiments. Jack got the best proportion of the transplants, and the professor was surprised to discover that the body structure of the undead was also artificially created creature. The professor was also surprised by someone the body structure of the undead was also an artificially created creature. Linda was violated by someone maybe 950 years ago. Not only that, the Boss Clan cells also allowed Jack's body to gain a strong immunity, which was just enough to counteract the negative effects of the ghost cells. This strong immunity allowed the professor to give birth to the idea of continuing to merge with other monsters. The original, they set out on a path to find monsters. The vampires also became a major part of their search. Vampires also became their target. Jack's regeneration. The ability to get a stronger effect and will not have a repulsive reaction to the silver holy water in daylight. It's not hard to guess why they had to have this diamond this time. The reason why their next target is the werewolf. But they also did not expect that Jin Qing. This experiment did not get any help, but survived. But compared to Jack, this kind of heavenly sowing monster, Jin Qing did not have the slightest advantage throughout the whole time by Jack stormed. Perhaps because Jin Qing relied on their own perseverance to survive, the reason Jack did not kill her. Saw that she lost resistance and sent a successful signal. Carmilla was also forced to retreat by the flare. The professor saw the signal, also directly chose to dominate the retreat. Finally had to regret. Perhaps because Jin Qing relied on her own perseverance to survive. The reason Jack did not have the intention to kill her, to see it lose resistance to send out the signal of success. Carmela was also forced to retreat by the flare to the professor to see the signal. It is also a direct choice of the domineering retreat. Finally had to regret the failure of today's wave of letting the pirate Robin to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Even the diamonds did not keep even the same thing that their hands empty. Was also never thought that the supply would sneak away the diamonds. The other side of the jacket thought that the mission was completed perfectly. But dream 4 months later, Kiaofu's daughter also disappeared from a fishing garden and was found 2 days later. 4 months later, girls from the village disappeared from fishing gardens again. They were all girls and disappeared from fishing gardens, and their bodies were found in the woods a few days later. Doctors suspected that there was a werewolf hiding in the village who would go berserk and kill people every 4 months. Half a year ago, villagers found a werewolf hiding in the village. The villagers discovered the werewolf in a hut. The villagers found the werewolf hiding in a hut and finally set the hut on fire and burned it down. And last night, there was another accident in the village. A girl screams from a residence house. The parents knock on the door, but only hear the girl's pleas for help. Finally, the man kicks in the door. It's a mess, and his daughter is gone. It's the 4th murder, and the village is in a state of panic the moment they see pressure. The villagers in the church lose control of their emotions. They start to act like murderers out of disgust for monsters, even pointing guns at pressure. But when the raven leaves, say they might be able to solve the case. The man lets go of the trigger convinced by the raven. Leaves, the man takes them to the house. The room is a mess. The floor is full of wolf footprints, but there's no blood in the broken window, suggesting that the werewolf has brought a snake with him. The man let go of the trigger after being convinced by Crowleaf. The man took them to the house. The room was a mess on the floor. There were a lot of wolf footprints, but the broken window. But not a bloody eye suggests that the werewolf had brought a snakeskin bag or something to take the girl away. It also suggests that the werewolf did not go crazy, but was full of sanity before they left. Crowleaf told the man that his daughter would not be able to return home. It was certainly a slap in the face. To the man, Yang Ye continued to the village chief's house. The village chief, the village headman said that his daughter would not return home. Yang Ye continued to the village headman's house. The headman told them that hundreds of years ago, this village was like a food box. People would climb up from under the waterfall to the ground and prey on the villagers as they wished. The headman pleaded for help to find this werewolf. Yang Ye offered to find the werewolf himself, but he didn't. The murderer would be found within 2 days, and if that went well, the village headman would tell them how to find the werewolf village. The village headman agreed. The village headman went on to say that the only suspects were the 3 outsiders: the doctor, the inker, and the painter. Because werewolves have sharp senses of the 5 lilies are placed in front of their noses with their strong fragrance, or by banging a gong or a drum in their ears, the werewolf would be startled and reveal its tail. But the 3 of them passed the test, so he concluded that there was no werewolf in the village. But naturally, the crows couldn't just take the word for it. But Crowleaf couldn't just listen to one side of the story. They went to the artist's house. Crowleaf didn't find anything suspicious, but when she talked to the artist, she found that the artist's posture with the brush didn't look like that of a professional artist. The artist said that she had seen a golden shadow of a werewolf. Other than that, she didn't have any other clues. When Crowleaf poked at her for not looking like an artist, the artist was very calm. She just gave an excuse and passed the visit to the doctor again, but then she knocked on the door of the doctor's house and said that she had seen a golden shadow of a werewolf, but there was nothing else. At night, Crowleaf visited the doctor again. But then there was a knock on the door, and the doctor opened the door, and in came No. 3 and number 4 of the Lupus Club, who had a big fight with Jing Qing within 7 paces of the doctor's door. Not only the gun is fast, Fists are also fast Jing Ching, although the gun is pointed at, but his hand also choked no. 3's neck, with his ancient physique, can be shot in an instant to break number 3's neck. Just the way to enter the werewolf cleansing land in the hands of the village headman. Need to solve the village's 3 murders in order to get the nuclear defense room. Can only stop the war to help the village to find the murderer first. On the other side of the painter. Sudden situation. Painter. The whole person was incredibly happy and admitted that he ate the man's daughter next. The next second is transformed into a werewolf skin so hard that even silver eggs cannot be shot through. The werewolf fled into the woods. Crowleaf and Jing Jing followed the werewolf. Fled to the river but was already waiting for Jing Jing hit. Know that the werewolf does not hurt Jing Jing Crow. Leaf will be given to the custody of the Jing Jing. She will be one-on-one with the werewolf. The werewolf roared and then attacked towards the Jing Jing. Jing, a roundhouse kick, but even the werewolf's skin has not even rubbed the, 6 transformed warrior, odd defense, speed, and strength. Luckily, Jing Jing has been through a lot of battles and always makes the best choice when facing werewolf's attacks. He wanted to stick his finger into the werewolf. The eyes were interrupted by even the coming number 3 and number 4. After landing, the werewolf turned into a wolf form. He rushed to the forbidden drama on the rock. Jing Jing led him at the eyes of the werewolf. But the werewolf even dodged the attack and chose to run towards the duck leaves and flung the birdcage towards the waterfall. The forbidden drama reacted by jumping out of the whole body and in the air using the bayonet to throw the birdcage back to the shore, and he also fell down the waterfall. But Konoha did not die when he got up beside Sleeping Maiden. With only She was rescued by Nora from the river because Konoha's body was
asked
too
the
cold.
2 girls to hold her to restore her body temperature. When she watched the wolf change into a human form, Konoha was shocked to find out that the girls were all villagers of the werewolf village. The werewolf village has lost 3 girls in the last year. All in their human form were killed by a shotgun. Blast their bodies were found in the woods because they all happened on a rainy night. So the werewolves couldn't trace the scent of the murderer. The most puzzling thing was the villagers were not able to find him. The most puzzling thing is that the villagers have never heard a gunshot, and the werewolves don't need guns. The murderer is probably a human. Humans are hostile. Nora found the forbidden play when he was carrying a rifle, which means he is not the murderer. Nora told the forbidden play to leave as soon as he recovers, because the village is heavily guarded. He will go to the village to attract the attention of other werewolves. The case in the human village has similarities, and the main modus operandi of one with a gun and the other with biting. The rest of the descriptions are almost the same. It's clear that it is intended to stir up the hatred between the humans and werewolves, to go in there to try to help the girls, but they don't want to believe the humans. She had to hide in the car. 2 girls took her away when they met a strong werewolf. The scent of flowers can be masked, but halfway through the car, the wheel suddenly breaks and you can only get out of the car. Hiding in the car, 2 girls took her away. The girls were not willing to trust the humans. The scent of the flowers could be masked, but in the middle of the road, the wheel suddenly broke and went in and had to get out of the car. This was bad. The werewolves were seeping out of their original form. The lions jumped out of the circle of defense and grabbed the broom from the woman, a werewolf. Came towards her and was hit in the throat by the shock of the punch not to be hurt. The 4 hands of the Gold Army a moment later were surrounded by 2 girls trying to help her defend herself. The 2 girls tried to help her defend herself. The main method was a gun and a bite. The rest of the story was exactly the same. It was obvious that they wanted to stir up hatred between humans and werewolves. Go in and try to help. The 2 girls tried to defend her, but no one believed them. Then the village headman appeared. According to the rules, humans must die when they appear. Play was Nora's way of saving the village. After the mayor of the village changed his mind, they put the forbidden play on a high platform for trial. If he lied, they would take away a pillar. As long as the platform didn't collapse at the end of the trial, he was not guilty. However, it was up to the mayor to decide whether he lied or not. He ignored the forbidden play and kept signaling for the pillar to be taken out as the platform was about to collapse. Suddenly, there was a gunshot from the woods and the smell of blood in the air. Everyone rushed to the scene to see Nora laying on a slab with a bullet lodged in her head. The oil was not raining today, but they couldn't smell the powder and the murderer, and they couldn't find him alone today. It did not rain. They could not smell the gunpowder and the smell of the murderer alone. They could not find the murderer. The mayor of the village dumped the blame on the forbidden drama that she was the murderer. These wolves could not stand to see her quickly shut up. Look at the 2 heartbroken young girls to go in. Cannot stand idly by, but she is not a raven goose. In the end, no certainty. She had to try. She found that the blood around the Nora is too little, and the Nora is wet clothes are dry. Suggests that the murderer is not the scene of death after the killing. The murderer moved her here after the killing, and then the men found traces on a tree that was still warm to the touch. The murderer had fired 2 shots, but they only heard a few of them. They were walking along the side of a steep and dangerous cliff when they gently looked up. A shout fell from the sky. Wolverine Battalion. God made man. Victor number 4 threw out a chain and pulled number 3 up and spun around, and number 3 fired again. The fight didn't last long, because it was also a deal. Victor would help them get rid of the guiding society. The 2 of them would give them the address of the werewolf village in order. For the information to be true. For now, it would have to be kept by Victor. For now, the 2 of them had known about the organization that was hiding in the dark. The 2 found clothes to go inside. The 2 of them found the clothes. They went in to meet Dwedra, who hurriedly transformed back into his body, and took them to the place where they were held. Thorn was still claiming credit for getting all the clothes back. Time is running out. Duckleaf asked him to tell him the results of the investigation, and then he went to the scene of the crime to investigate. On the other hand, the wolves have sensed the smell of strangers, are looking for the alarming smell to come at the critical moment. Duckleaf found hidden in the boulders under the secret passage to escape the pursuit, but this accidentally let Duckleaf found a big secret passage. Is the first scene of the murder that the murder weapon lying in fear in the wall to find the secret passage for a while. The 2 also found the body of yesterday's escape flower fragrance. He revealed his identity. Yesterday is obviously to take the blame for the sight of a group of people gently out of the secret passage. They actually went to the human village. The murderer is the use of the secret passage to and from the 2 villages. Continue to kill young girls to the human, and the wolves in the team of temporary omission. Of the doctor just found 2 people. The secret passage is also known to the doctor. Luis's body was also just found. The husband and wife were paralyzed and the repressed forced to ask the man. Told half a year ago, Luis's body was also just found.
The man said that he had been in the hospital for 6 months. The man told half a year ago things Luis, because of childhood legs disabled by parents as a burden, since the eldest child was only 4 years old, was abandoned in the woods to let him. But Luis was hidden in the human village werewolf children after the discovery of the moon envoy. Werewolf voice, in order to reflect their own value to the village head, ratted out the werewolf mother and daughter were surrounded by the villagers in the hut, burned to death to understand what happened. She also intended to become a werewolf village, but the entrance to the tunnels were open, traces of the original life, and the painter bodies have disappeared, and the wolf Hang Shang followed them and called a large number of dead villagers on the other side of the Kaya to look for companions, but found the scene of chaos, several beautiful body-thin flesh lying on the ground, and she also poison fainted. You do not want to turn into a monkey. With the help of Vera, the forbidden drama was rescued. At this time, the werewolf village has been a big mess. Angry humans and werewolves began to fight the Wolf Soul Society because of the hatred of monsters. So, the werewolves were mercilessly Victor and the fireman because of the mission of the competition to kill all 4 sides of the Tiangxin, a 1-man 3 werewolves. And the werewolves are not the only one in the village. The village of Old Man, the village of the Old Man, and the village of the Old Man, and the village of the Old Man. The Old Man's village is under siege by 4 forces, but the culprit behind the attack has not yet appeared. Crowleaf. While still searching for clues, he led in to retrieve Kaya, but Kaya was already blurred by Carmilla. On the other hand, Lao and Shooting Stinger number 4 encountered Victor, and number 4 encountered Firemilk, and a battle was inevitable. Victor's body was too big, and number 4 was chained up against the wall, and while hanging on, Jin Qing passed by and kicked number 4, who was just trying to let the two of them continue to bite each other. But number 4 used the chain to tie him up, and Victor broke off an arm and broke away. When the chain was broken, Victor broke his arm and threw his arm at number 4. Number 4 was knocked down and Jin Qing gave him a kick. Number 4 was defeated. Jin Qing didn't forget to ask for the diamonds and asked Victor about Crowleaf's body. Victor told him that not only was Crowleaf mint condition, but that their stronghold was in London and they'd be able to bring the two of them here to steal his body. Jin Qing, who got the answer, turned around and left. He still had to carry out the Crowleaf's plan, and the battle between the firemen and number 3 had reached a heated stage. A shovel suddenly flew into the air, and number 3 was surprised by the sudden movement of the shovel. A shovel suddenly flew into the air. No. 3 fired 2 shots at the shovel. Fireman's body slowly fell to the ground. Thought that the other party was finished. His own neck was suddenly stabbed. Not at the same time. At the same time, Konoha is dealing with Carmilla. Last time suffered a loss, so that Konoha must get back to the occasion. But under Carmilla's attack, Forbidden Drama accidentally was also wounded. He again hit Carmilla's poison. Carmilla again rushed to Forbidden Drama to maintain the last rationality of a shot to hit Carmilla. But his poison attack into the hallucination of him is unable to resist the Carmilla. Just when the Forbidden Drama is about to be sucked, risk Carmilla, but stopped until the Forbidden Drama up the other party has already left the golden sentence and the Raven Knight will be sucked blood. A few girls placed to the werewolves the altar. Raven Knight had found out the culprit of the conflict between the werewolves and the humans. A golden wolf quietly appeared at the altar up. And down the werewolf village chief panicked because there was only one pure golden wolf in the village that was supposed to be dead. Nor at the same time she was also a human village of Lewis, and she also had a name that was Yata. 13 years ago, Yati's mother was banished by the chief of the village to the human village after her mother began to work in the village as a human. Louise found out that Jot was a werewolf. The mother and daughter were denounced. The whole village surrounded the mother and daughter and set fire to the hut. At the last moment, the mother put her into the secret tunnel. He was burned to death inside the house. The bones left behind were fox bones, just to keep the villagers from believing that the mother and daughter were dead in order to take revenge. Yote tied Luis into the secret tunnel. But in fact, Luis also purchased the human village and decided to take the initiative to help Yoto. So Yote posed as Luis during the day, and at night he posed as Nora, to go back and forth to both villages to kill the young girl using the secret tunnel. The reason why there were 2 bodies is because the body was reused, and then Yoda took his body to the human village and changed into a werewolf to bite his wounded parts to make the war. The reason why there were 2 corpses was because the bodies were reused after Louis was shot. Yacht brought his body to the human village and changed into a werewolf, and bit off his wounded part, so that the humans would think that Louis had been killed by a werewolf. Such a meticulous layout that Crow's throat couldn't help but admire. Yacht stood quietly on the platform and his plan was already in place. He was going to go far away and make use of the crowd on the platform to move in and out of the village. He will go far away and use the embrace of the platform to leap and disappear from the view of all the people. The village headman fell to his knees and cried out, "This is a great honor!" Already guessed by Yang Ye Jinqing had been waiting in the secret passage for a long time. His wolf howl in the dead of night put out all the candles using the werewolf's advantage in the darkness. He kept feeding Jin Qing, but in the end, it was Jin Qing who was better. Crowleaf arrives and makes Jin Qing let her go. Crowleaf apologizes to Yacht for her reasoning was wrong. It turns out that Yacht wasn't trying to cause a big war. Her real purpose was to help the young werewolf girl to escape from the village of humans that she captured her from. She captured young girls from human villages, disfigured them, and disguised their deaths as werewolf girls. Every human sacrifice saves a werewolf, because werewolves are obsessed with powerful offspring. The young girls of the werewolf village are only used as breeding tools, and the werewolves are called the strongest werewolves. The head of the village, the Yurin, can only imagine what Yote's life would be like if she were to become a witch. She has to escape before she turns 13, and until then, she can only save 3. The werewolf girl can avoid the human is innocent. She did hurt her, should be punished. Duck also shook his head. His reasoning is wrong. Then the culprit should be counted extrajudicial. And she is also trapped in the birdcage for her sufferings, quite sympathetic. Of course, the case is over. Boss Girls Season 1 is also over. Let's look forward to the next. Crow will be solving what cases Jing Jing will encounter what opponent it.